Welcome to the Animal Wellness Podcast, all about improving the lives of animals with better policies and practices in government and business. Brought to you by Animal Wellness Action, where we believe helping animals helps us all. Here's your host, Joseph Grove.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show. Few images are more closely associated with New York City than horse-drawn carriages rolling through Central Park. For generations, they've been marketed as a timeless tradition, a romantic way to experience one of the world's greatest cities. But behind that carefully cultivated image is a very different reality. These horses spend their lives navigating one of the busiest urban environments on Earth, surrounded by taxis, buses, trucks, construction equipment, sirens, bicycles, scooters, and millions of pedestrians. These horses are prey animals whose instinct when frightened is to flee. And when that instinct collides with Manhattan traffic, the consequences can be devastating. In fact, they have been. In recent weeks, two tragic deaths have brought unprecedented scrutiny to the industry. A 16-year-old horse named Deniz died after consuming poisonous Japanese yew leaves while under the care of his driver. Days later, 18-year-old Romanch Mahajan, celebrating his acceptance to college with his family, was killed after his carriage horse suddenly began to bolt through Central Park, throwing him to the ground and causing a mortal head injury. These tragedies have transformed what was once viewed as a debate about tourism into a broader conversation about public safety, animal welfare, and whether horse-drawn carriage rides still belong in a modern city. Momentum for change has never been stronger. A majority of New York City Council members have now signed on to legislation known as Intro 943, which would phase out the horse-drawn carriage industry. The proposal also has drawn support from Mayor Zoran Mandami and City Council Speaker Julie Menon, setting the stage for what could become one of the most significant victories for working horses in America. The debate now centers on whether New York will finally join other cities that have concluded this 19th century business no longer belongs in a 21st century world. Today, we'll explore what brought us to this moment, what happens next, and why the outcome in New York could reshape the future of working horses across the country. Joining me is Wayne Pacelli, president of Animal Wellness Action and the Center for a Humane Economy. Wayne has spent decades working on animal protection policy and has helped lead national campaigns involving horse slaughter, racehorse welfare, carriage horses, and a range of reforms affecting equines. He recently testified before the New York City Council in support of Intro 943 and has argued that replacing horse-drawn carriages represents both an animal welfare imperative and a public safety necessity. Also on the show is Adita Bernkrant, Executive Director of NYCLASS, a nonprofit animal rights organization founded on the core mission of saving New York City carriage horses, enacting animal rights legislation into law, and electing pro-animal candidates to office. A lifelong New Yorker and one of the nation's foremost advocates for carriage horses, Adita has been working to end the use of horse-drawn carriages in New York City since 2007. Wayne, Adita, welcome to the show. So, Adita, you've spent countless hours observing carriage horses on New York's streets. What do people who only see a carriage passing through Central Park never witness about these animals' daily lives?
So some people are not aware that these horses never graze on pasture. Even though they are on the park drives, they never touch grass. When they go back through miles of traffic to dilapidated warehouse buildings on the far west side, where they have to go up steep ramps and they are confined to only by law 60 square foot stalls with zero turnout, zero access to pasture or grazing ability, which is necessary for the health of a horse, as equine veterinarians and experts say. So they are denied what is most basic to them.
Right. So, this notion that we have that the entire experience of the animal is as refined and sophisticated as the carriage itself would suggest, that's a mirage. That's not the way it really is.
Not at all. And many of these horses are lame, geriatric horses with untreated injuries or health issues, such as Ryder, which was an elderly horse that had cancer and other health problems. But many of the horses we find are limping. They have leg problems. They're older horses that should have been retired. They're suffering. And we can do better for these horses. There's rescue farms ready to take them. So that's the goal of Romanch's law.
Yeah. And Wayne, in your recent blogs, you talk about another aspect of the horse's experience, and that is not only when they are, not pulling the carriage, but what that's like for them when they're on the job. Give me kind of a feel, Wayne, for your perspective on what the horse endures pulling that carriage around.
Well, I think Adita set this up nicely, that these animals are, they're in the latter stages of their lives. They've been conscripted into this, labor act. And, I don't think it's so much the pulling the carriage. It's just the whole milieu that they're in. It's simply not suitable for them to be standing on asphalt and concrete all the time. It's not the right, safe environment to be dodging traffic and pedicabs and people on scooters. The animals are flight animals. They respond by running when they sense fear. It's just hardwired in horses. That's what happened with Samson, who had the Mahajan family in the carriage. And we don't know what the triggers are, but we know that this has happened time after time after time, and it makes biological sense. It makes behavioral sense. So, Joseph, I think it's the whole thing, right? These are geriatric horses who, many of them have health problems. Many of them have to go through downtown crowded traffic to get to Central Park. You're in a park that has 43 million visitors a year. It's one of the most crowded places. It has incredible, human activity with all the cars and blaring horns and sirens. It's a prescription for trouble for the horses and for the people carried. And, when you are talking about a 1,500-pound horse and a carriage, someone could be run over. I mean, Romanch Mahajan was spilled from a fast-moving carriage. Somebody could be run over. I mean, this was something that Adita predicted on behalf of NICLAS many years ago. No one has studied their condition more carefully than she has. We have a record of action here. And for what purpose? I mean, I always ask that with animal issues. Do we really need to do these things to animals? Because the use is so essential, right? If you're hiking in Montana and a grizzly bear comes upon you and it's life or death, I can make an argument for self-defense that you kill the grizzly bear. But that's totally different than if you're going out searching for a grizzly bear and trying to find them and kill them. That's a moral difference, because one is completely gratuitous. You're kind of courting the threat by chasing an animal. Another one is just circumstance. These horse carriages have no practical value. They're not transporting goods that people need for food and for materials in the household as they were in the 19th century. This is just a tourist thing. And you got plenty of other tourism transportation options in the park.
And we'll talk about some of those as we go deeper into the show. Adita, this issue has been on the forefront, or at least percolating, for a number of years. Is it the death of a human being that is making this year feel different? Why is it apparent that perhaps we're at a tipping point?
Absolutely. I think that really brought increased momentum, but the bill was actually introduced the week before Romanch's death, and there was tremendous momentum after the collapse and public gruesome death of a horse named Deniz in front of horrified onlookers. And this was one of many horses who have collapsed and died in the park. So there was tremendous momentum already. But as Wayne said, we literally predicted this on the steps of City Hall a week before. Someone is going to be killed if you keep delaying. And that's exactly what happened. And the group that manages the park, the Central Park Conservancy, for the past year now has been urging the council. This was the 8th violent runaway incident in Central Park in the past year. and many were near fatalities, as Wayne points out. There was a woman named Michelle Chin who testified at the hall hearing last week, saying that in the past 9 months, she witnessed 2 violent incidents. She was nearly trampled by a runaway horse last Labor Day when this horse took off. The passengers were actually trapped in the back and had to jump out. Now, that could have ended in a fatality just like Romanch. Thank God they managed to just have minor injuries, but there have been dozens of these kinds of crashes. We have been warning for decades now, but I think the fact that now a teenager in this completely avoidable and preventable death is gone, and his shattered family has been speaking out. They testified. People were crying in the audience, including members of the city council. All of this could have been avoided. And the prior sponsor to this bill, Robert Holden, in the previous council to 4 years, had his legislation blocked from even a hearing. And he pointed out in his testimony something really chilling. Had that bill gone into effect, it would have been passed into law June 1st of this year, shutting down the horse carriages. Romanch was killed June 17th. People gasped in the audience at the hearing that. It just drives it home that we were blocked from a hearing for over 4 years, the entire last council term. So the urgency of this could not be clearer, and we are still documenting that carriage drivers are doing the exact behaviors that killed Romanch, leaving horses, even with babies, unattended to take pictures, just walking away and abandoning the horses in Central Park. Some people don't realize how busy the park drives are. Where the horses operate is a narrow path with speeding cyclists, city bikes, pedicabs, strollers, big trucks, police cars. It is not a bucolic stroll on the grass. It is almost as busy as a city street on a busy day. And as Wayne said, it's 42 million visitors every year. This is no place for a horse chained up to a carriage.
Well, Adita, they're also coming from stables, some of them from the Hell's Kitchen area, but miles away. So they're going through traffic, right? There's no other way to get there. So the idea that it's only in a park setting, that, number one, the park is not this quiet, bucolic place. It is humming and buzzing with activity and fast motion and an incredible number of disruptive noises. But, that move from Hell's Kitchen to Central Park is a long one and very dangerous.
And it's in rush hour traffic. And there actually is nothing in the law preventing drivers can also give rides. During the entire month of December, they're giving rides down Fifth Avenue. Now, if anyone's been to Manhattan and Fifth Avenue heading towards Rockefeller Center in December, it is total chaos. They give prearranged rides. So there's a loophole in the law that if a driver sets up a prearranged ride, they can drive essentially anywhere, Times Square, Rockefeller Center, Fifth Avenue. So there's that loophole in the law that allows that. So they are in the gridlock, in the chaos, flashing lights, honking horns. It's just heartbreaking.
Right. Well, Wayne, what would you say to people who argue the other side that, yeah, we hear you, but golly, the tradition of this, right? The romance, the clip-clop of horses. What would you say to people who would argue that, it's tradition and it's worth preserving in some way?
Well, I think that the actions from the city of Chicago, our third largest city, Philadelphia, our fourth or fifth largest city, really tell the larger sort of dynamic that's at work, that you have a vestigial commercial practice, right? It doesn't bear any real resemblance to what horse carriages were doing 100, 150 years ago. I mean, they had an actual function before the internal combustion engine was developed. So this is now just a small number of people. It's 69 medallions, I believe. Those are the people who are authorized to operate the carriages. It's about 200 horses who are cycled through this system. It's a very small enterprise, and it's just not in the right setting. So we're not saying people shouldn't be riding horses. We're not saying that people, shouldn't have experience with horses. We're the biggest boosters of the human-animal bond, and that includes the human-horse bond, this is just not the right place for it to play out. And again, you're talking about a handful of jobs in the biggest city in the United States. You're talking about real documented harm to horses. You're talking about now a death of a young man, with more of that to come. There's just no question that we'll see more death, we'll see more suffering, and for what purpose? Again, the relative risk versus the reward is asymmetrical.
Okay, very good. And what will happen to the drivers? Is there any part of this legislation that offers any relief for them? Are these people just put out of business? I'll ask next what happens to the horses, but what will happen to the people whose livelihoods are dependent on this practice right now?
Yeah, very important question. And that was discussed a lot at the hearing last week. So it was also revealed that while a union happens to be representing the business, these are not union jobs. The drivers themselves have no guaranteed salary, no health insurance, no benefits. They're classified as independent contractors. So if they're injured, they have no recourse for disability or workers' compensation. No real worker protections that every worker deserves. So what's on the table would be a win-win for everyone. The drivers will be given a package of options of city jobs that are a guaranteed higher salary, health insurance, benefits, worker protections that they currently are denied. So this will be a big benefit to everyone and also safer. It's often the drivers themselves that are at the highest risk of injury. Just in May, actually, a driver nearly died because two horses collided. He was thrown from the carriage and the carriage flipped on top of him. He was badly injured. There's been drivers that have been in comas from landing on their head, near deaths, many, many injuries. So not only will they have a safer job opportunities, just guaranteed jobs that aren't dependent on the weather or whether people want to take rides. Also, it's an obsolete business. My testimony was on behalf of Anita McGill, whose family operation of Chateau Stables existed for nearly 50 years in New York City. And she is now on our side saying this needs to be shut down because, as she pointed out, just in the last several years, Central Park has changed dramatically with the way people use the park, with more people, electric bikes, all the things that are creating frightening stimuli. And she also says that some of the owners have reached out to her desperate for a way to get out of the business even before a ban. There's no new drivers wanting to take the carriage horse license exam. Their business is down because the public has seen these videos go viral of horses dropping dead and crashing. And now everyone knew about this news of this teenager who died. And just to give a little backstory about how tragic it is, this was the Mahajan's family first time in America. They came to celebrate Romanch's 18th, his graduation from high school. And when this horse spooked and took off and this family was terrified, Romanch died while trying to save his mother as she tumbled out of the carriage. And for him to lose his life in this completely avoidable way when this has been going on for so long is so heartbreaking to all of us. The time has come. I mean, it should have been done long ago, but there's been a lot of political gridlock because of a powerful union's involvement. But the truth is that the workers themselves are also in a bad position here. And the city is offering them a much better, safer employment where they are not at risk of getting thrown on their head, where they have a guaranteed salary and benefits and worker protections. They have none of those things as carriage drivers.
Yeah, Dita, I just want to underscore, that this is Wayne. I've been involved in a lot of campaigns, a lot of lawmaking at the federal level, state level, and to a lesser degree, the local level, but still substantial there. And I've never seen a legislative body bend over backwards to accommodate the group that is going to be, phased out of existence. I mentioned when I testified that, I led a ballot measure in Oklahoma in 2002 to criminalize cockfighting. There were 2.5 million fighting birds in the state at the time. There were 10,000 cockfighters. The state provided no off-ramp for these people, no alternative means of income generation, partly because there'd been a long-running debate about how inhumane this was and that they knew it was coming. You have been active on this issue for many years. I remember when I first came to New York and began working there, working for Cleveland Amory with the Fund for Animals in 1989. Mr. Amory, who was a legendary animal advocate, immediately talked to me about our work to try to stop carriage horses. He would speak to the carriage horse drivers and tell them he thought they should stop, that what they were doing was inhumane to the horses, that it was dangerous. So this was 40 years ago, nearly. This is something that everybody has known was an issue. You don't go into this business. You don't go into a business knowing that you're going to be regulated out of existence. That's part of your calculation. And I think that the drivers knew this was coming, and they claim that they're caring for the horses well, but you have incident after incident. They claim that it's safe, and now a young man is dead. So this is exactly the way it should be happening, but I continue to be amazed at how compassionate the city council members are toward the carriage drivers and guaranteeing them jobs. I've not seen this with other animal legislation, with animal fighting or other practices where people were making money from this. Are we going to stop the drug trade in the United States, but then we're going to give all the drug dealers jobs? This is just not the way it typically works. But what it does, it speaks to what a small little community of drivers this is, that the city can actually do this and give them a safe landing, because they're a negligible industry in terms of economic activity. They serve no essential purpose. And this doesn't stop them, if they want to have time with horses, from recreating with horses like millions of other Americans do. They just can't make money from them in Central Park in the streets of downtown Manhattan.
You're listening to the Animal Wellness Podcast. We'll be right back after this quick word from our sponsor.
Animal Wellness Action depends on countless people like you to support our fight for animals. Join us today by donating to further our campaigns to spare countless animals from cruel and needless pharmaceutical tests. Put an end to animal fighting. Liberate farm animals from extreme confinement and so many others. Become a donor at any amount. Visit animalwellnessaction.org/donate to join our fight against animal cruelty of all kinds. Again, that's animalwellnessaction.org/donate. Thank you.
Now, back to the Animal Wellness Podcast.
Adina, do the horses like this work? A lot of people think that, gosh, the horses are out there, they're doing something. What about that argument that these horses are psychologically benefited in some way by having this purpose?
I think many of the veterinarians and experts who have testified and supported this effort say that, no, I don't think so, because they are being denied some of their most basic needs, such as turnout. These are herd animals who just are kept in solitary confinement in tiny stalls. They're never touching grass. They're denied proper veterinary care. Being chained up all day with no freedom of movement is not the same as having turnout and socialization. These are things that horses need to be healthy. And the fact that actually there was an independent equine vet, Dr. Craig Kulikowski, who testified at the hearing. He's the only independent vet that ever got into those stables last year. And he had a lot of damning things to say, including finding lame horses where there was no concern that these horses were still being worked, lack of dental care, scarring on the horses. But he particularly pointed out that the stabling conditions, the fact that, number one, these many of them are large draft horses, are kept in such small stalls. The fact that they have no turnout areas, no grazing ability, makes that even more of a problem. And he's even said something to the effect that it makes it more likely that there will be catastrophic instances where horses will run wild or get out of control because they are denied that freedom of movement that they need to be healthy. And he also pointed out that the lack of pasture or grazing ability could lead to horses like Deniz desperately eating any greenery they find, including toxic plants, which is what happened last month as well. And I want to be clear, that was entirely the fault of the driver, because we believe he abandoned his horse like many of them do, and he let his horse eat copious amounts of an unknown plant, which is against the park rules and no responsible horse owner would do. But unfortunately, these horses are probably desperate for any greenery because they're never on grass. So those are the things that an independent equine vet that got into the stables last year pointed out. And we absolutely agree with all of that.
The idea that a horse is poisoned by a plant is a terrible outcome for that horse. I mean, there's pain and suffering. You could see it. And that was a violation. I mean, you would think that the horse care drivers would be on their best behavior, knowing that a bill was introduced, that this has been a 40-year effort to curtail these horse carriages in the city. But a man violated, the carriage driver violated one of the standards, that is no grazing on vegetation. And then a second driver violated the standard of leaving the carriage and taking a picture of the Mahajan family. And that's what enabled the Samson to run and lead to this terrible accident. So the two cases that are the most recent and therefore relevant part of the policy discussion were a consequence of failures of carriage drivers to adhere to the minimal regulations that exist. Yet now they're saying, well, regulate us more. If you're so great at handling these animals, if you understand them and there's a huge horse-human bond, why do we need these regulations? Why aren't you just doing it? Why aren't you just carefully caring for them so they're healthy? Clearly, there's a disconnect here.
Right. Adita, how many horses, remind us, please, stand to be liberated if this bill passes, this law, and what happens to them?
Right. So the number we have is 160 horses, give or take. And for many years, we have always been concerned with the question of what happens to the horses. The truth is that we have helped rescue several carriage horses that end up in the slaughter auctions because there is no retirement plan for these horses. The owners will simply often sell off a horse to an Amish farmer, a lame horse or a sick horse, and then that Amish farmer sends them to a slaughter auction. That's how we rescued our horse Chance, Bernard, many other horses. So there is no retirement plan right now. These horses are at risk of slaughter, but we have over the years created a huge network of rescue farms, sanctuaries, organizations. There was even a coalition called the Coalition for the Responsible Carriage Horse Retirement that testified at the hearing saying we have over 36 rescue farms and sanctuaries ready to take in these horses, pledging to give them lifelong loving care. That's the only chance these horses have of being on grass and getting proper veterinary care and the love that they deserve. So that has been set up for years because we've been waiting for the opportunity to finally end this.
Right. And you mentioned slaughter, and I want to pivot now to Wayne, because Animal Wellness Action and the Center for a Humane Economy have done a lot of work for horses facing a variety of precarities. And certainly slaughter is one of the more horrific. I think many people are still surprised that we slaughter horses, sometimes even for human consumption. And that's one of the things, Wayne, you're very passionate about and working hard on. Talk about the current state of exporting horses to slaughter plants and what is being done to stop that.
Yeah, well, let me just back up just a little bit, Joseph, with the carriage drivers saying, oh, if we don't continue this enterprise, then horses are going to be slaughtered. I don't know what they're talking about. I mean, it makes no sense to me because there is an incredible network, as Adita indicated, of sanctuaries and rescue groups that provide homes for horses. And there's literally a coalition called Homes for Horses. My former position as CEO of the Humane Society of the U.S., I oversaw the two largest horse sanctuaries in the United States. We had 1,000 horses between those two facilities. And that is just the sliver of the overall pie of horse rescues and sanctuaries in the nation. There are tens of thousands of horses that have refuge and protection. So we would do everything imaginable to make sure that every one of those horses has a safe landing at a suitable facility. Joseph, you know that we at Animal Wellness Action and the Center for Humane Economy work to negotiate an agreement to phase out the use of beagles by Ridgeland Farms in its trade to animal-based laboratories for testing. And between us and one other group, we managed more than 2,000 animals who came out of that facility. We had 10 or 20 potential adopters for every dog. It wasn't, there was so much competition because those dogs had become celebrities because of the attention. As we record this podcast, there's a front page story in the New York Times talking about the horses. These horses are now celebrities. There will be no problem in getting homes for every single one of them, homes in the sense that it's a safe place for them to live, whether it's at someone's private pastures and property, or whether it's a sanctuary or a rescue organization. On the broader issue of horse slaughter, Joseph, we're making a lot of progress. In 1990, there were 400,000 American horses slaughtered in the United States and exported to Canada and Mexico, our North American neighbors. It's down now to about 25,000. So it's been a 95% reduction in the number of horses slaughtered. And we've seen no uptick in abandonment. We've seen no uptick in cruelty cases, which was the argument by the horse slaughter proponents. Oh, if we don't have an outlet for these horses like slaughter, we're going to be up to our ears in horses. There's going to be abandonment. There's going to be cruelty. There's going to be neglect. We haven't seen any of that. And we are in a mad dash to try to get this Congress and this president this year to end all horse slaughter. We had a very favorable circumstance as a result of a really tragic movement of a parasitic fly, the New World screwworm, who came from Central America and then up through Mexico and out into the United States. As a consequence of the threat to horses, the cattle industry, and other mammals, the U.S. Department of Agriculture has temporarily restricted all live exports of American horses to Mexico. That accounts for the preponderance of those 25,000 horses, probably about 20,000 to 25,000. So we're basically not shipping horses. And in Canada, on the other side of the big second big U.S. border with the North American neighbor, one of the two horse slaughter plants in Canada just shuttered. So there's only one left. So we are now at the point of just finishing off all horse slaughter in the United States. Good riddance to this predatory, despicable, inhumane enterprise. I wouldn't call it an industry because, like the horse carriage industry, it's a nothing burger in terms of economic impact, but it's horrible for the horses caught up in the trade. So this is just scaremongering by the horse carriage people. They do not understand the issue. They are not involved in horse sanctuaries and horse rescue in any meaningful way. They have no clue, apparently, that absorbing 160 horses is going to be a snap for the humane community in the United States.
Yeah. And I will note that I've worked with you, Wayne, for about 6 years now, and it's the first time I've heard you say nothing burger. So it's good to know that you're adopting the vernacular of the common man. So that's excellent. Adita, you've been fighting this horse issue. You've been fighting for them since 2007, which I can't believe it's 20 years. What would victory mean to you personally if this goes your way in August?
It would be almost surreal. It would be a surreal victory in a way because this has been such a crazy saga. It definitely deserves a Netflix documentary. It's been such an insane saga. I've had my life threatened, been attacked, been sued twice, been defamed, vilified. But I've been very invested in this issue because I see firsthand how much these horses suffer, what they're going through, the lies about our organization, the mistruths. And for so long, we were sort of screaming from the rafters. and we were being ignored. And eventually it just shows that you can't give up on these issues that can seem hard. It's a victory for activism, because when you are relentless, when you keep going, keep marching on, keep screaming the truth, keep speaking out, don't give up. We went through so many different variations on this issue. We switched to getting reforms, which we did pass a heat bill and moving the horses from a different location on the street into the park. But we always knew that the ultimate goal was to shut it down completely. And so now I think that all of this momentum, and we're very grateful to all of the advocates in New York and groups like Animal Wellness Action and Wayne and so many others who have also never given up on this issue. It's a real victory for the animal community in general and for activism to show that the only way you won't win these hard issues is if you give up. And many times people have even told us, why don't you give this up already? You're never going to win. You're never going to beat this union. There's too much against this, but we never gave up, because we knew that just seeing our own rescued horse Chance running free and transforming into an entirely different horse than what she was when she came in pain and not even knowing how to be a horse. Seeing all that led us to never want to give up, and it will be just an amazing victory. And you know what? There's a lot of other issues we want to focus on to get done in New York City. So once this is done, we can also continue doing great work to help animals.
Yeah, we're not doing a victory lap, Joseph, on this yet, because the vote still needs to happen. I've been involved in too many legislative campaigns where things have spun off the rail, and you don't count your chickens, if you will. So having said that, getting it to this stage, an incredible tribute to Edita Bernkrant for what she's done in leading this effort with Steve Mislick. NICLAS has been the lead organization on this. They deserve our plaudits and credit for the resolve that they have exhibited in a long, tough fight against this union that has really just not brought any argument to bear, but just tried to, use political muscle to stop an idea that is a good one and has been a good one for a long time. So I just really want to thank them for Edita. You and Steve have done a super job. So many hundreds of people showed up the other day at the hearing in New York. I think it was 5-1 in our favor. And the polling shows that the people of New York want this stopped. And I didn't hear any good arguments. I just heard just false claims that this was safe, that, these people, I'm sure that they think they care about the horses, but there are objective measures to show that that's not the outcome that anyone who cares about horses should want to see. And the fact, they were throwing out immigrant issues. I mean, how can you be talking about this as an immigrant sort of protection or rights issue for an industry that's been going for 150 years? I mean, you have people who've been involved for decades in this. They're claiming somehow that this is the only way that immigrants are going to have job opportunities in the United States. I mean, that's a bad news memo for immigrants coming to America. If there are millions of immigrants coming to the United States, you got maybe 2 or 3 jobs annually that become available. It's crazy.
Exactly. And as was, I think, effectively pointed out, this is a bad situation for those drivers because there's more spooking accidents. Several drivers this year were nearly killed and thrown from the carriage. There's no stable income here. There's no benefits, no worker protections. But like you pointed out, I think politically, for many years, this was not seen as an animal welfare or even a public safety issue. The elected officials saw it as a union issue because this is a very powerful union, and they are very aggressive. They would, pay a lot of money for full-page ads viciously attacking any elected official who supported this, and would threaten to primary them. So, like many other issues, the merits of this issue were not given a fair chance until this year. And I always knew that once we were given a hearing, there would be such overwhelming support. Over 70% of New Yorkers in a recent poll The mayor's on our side, the majority of the city council, the speaker of the council, Julie Menon. We have tremendous support. But as Wayne said, we haven't crossed the finish line yet. We are hopeful that August 13th, which is the next opportunity the city council has to vote on bills, we are hopeful that that is when Romanch's law will get the vote. We don't have confirmation on that yet, but it looks very good that that is the case. And once we get that confirmation, we will alert everyone. We'd love everyone who was able to come to the hearing to come out to see this bill being voted on. I do believe if we get the vote, we can win, but we have to be very vigilant because in the next few weeks, there's no slowing down. This is like we keep up. This is a marathon. We're at the 25th mile. We got to make it to 26. So we're going to keep the pressure on. We're asking New Yorkers, continue contacting your council members. If they haven't supported the bill, ask them to co-sponsor it. If they have, thank them. Talk about it on social media. Ask your friends and family in New York City to speak out, because I can assure you the union is doing everything they can, and they have an unlimited amount of money to spend on ads and attacks. So we have to fight very hard to make sure we win.
Thank you for listening to the Animal Wellness Podcast. Please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and follow Animal Wellness Action on Facebook, X, Instagram, and LinkedIn. To stay current with all of our news and information and to take action to help animals, sign up at animalwellnessaction.org. Until next time, remember, helping animals helps us all.